Tuesday, May 26, 2020. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Scott.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just a couple of brief announcements. First of all, welcome everybody who is listening and watching us tonight. I want to remind everybody that the broadcast is being recorded for future viewing by people. If you are online here, please mute your microphone at home so that we can all hear one another without background interference. So with that, if we can start with open forum, just a couple of things that I have. First of all, I would like to extend the board and the town's thank you to Chip Barrett and to his staff and the highway crew and anybody else who helped in the cleanup over the weekend of May 15th. When a microburst blew through the northern part of our town. And once again, we saw the power of Mother Nature and its destructive force as dozens of poles and trees came down and roads were blocked and people were without power, including our town manager. So thank you to Chip, the crew, and everybody who helped out over the weekend to get, I think, everybody back online and all of the roads cleared by the end of the day on Sunday. And then the second thing I would like to remind everybody is town elections are on June 30th. We are encouraging everybody to vote by mail this year. You can obtain a ballot by going to the town's website and going to the town clerk's webpage and going there and clicking on the application, and you can apply for a mail-in ballot, fill out your application, send it back to the town clerk's office, either by email, fax, or regular mail, and a ballot will be mailed to you. And then once you fill out your ballot, you can either return it, mail it back to Town Hall, or there is a secure drop box now outside of Town Hall in which you can drop your ballot. And for anybody who still prefers to vote in person at a polling place, our polling places will be open on June 30th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. if you prefer to vote in person. We will be following all of the necessary protective personal equipment as well as social distancing at the polling places. So just want folks to know that. So anybody else have any announcements? Look at this, Scott.
I just wanted to say thanks to our Veteran Affairs agent, Ryan Cobley, and Heather Monahan for what was a very, very well done Memorial Day ceremony yesterday. They had a common presence with the flag raising. Jim Goswell played taps. The online tribute was wonderful. And Nick and Patty at WCAT did a great job of editing and putting it together. The program, Kurt Mecklenburg had some great pictures. I think it was a really fitting tribute, and I think worthy of the veterans that we had we honored. So thanks to all those folks that made it happen.
Okay, and Tom, I think you had something.
Yeah, two quick things. One, just to echo Scott, I'm thanking Westford Cat for their excellent support of that wonderful event. The second is the Westford Economic Development Committee really wants to hear from you. I know that the town staff has done a terrific job working with local businesses to help with a smart, safe reopening. I know that's been going on with restaurants, and there's been some careful planning there, so thank you to town staff for that. But if you're part of a business here in town and you've got any concerns, if there's anything that you'd like to see in terms of assistance from the town during this difficult time, please contact us at the Westford Economic Development Committee. You can just Google Westford Economic Development Committee and all the members show up there, or you can just shoot me an email at tclay@westfordma.gov.
Okay. Elizabeth?
I wanted to say thank you to the highway/parks department, the crew there, for their help opening the community garden. And we opened this past weekend with about 150 gardeners, and the water department is still making some improvements for us. The gardeners are very grateful for the assistance so we could safely open the garden, and everyone was down there eagerly putting in their tomatoes this past weekend. So thank you.
It's a great weekend to do it.
It was.
Okay. All right, with that, we can move on to our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda is a request for, Eric, you just took the consent agenda off. We have a request for the annual tree lighting ceremony with the chorus concert and arrival of Santa Claus by fire truck for Sunday, November 29th, 2020, from 3 to 6 p.m. And that's actually the only item on our consent agenda today. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We will be roll calling all votes. So Mark?
Yes.
Scott?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to old and new business. Jody, can you update us on the school department's contract with D bus service?
Yes, I spoke with Ingrid today and they thought they had an agreement and they don't. So she asked if we could continue this to June 9th while she continues to negotiate with them.
Fine. Okay. I think then we'll just wait to hear back from her as to when she would, like when there's a contract and when she'd like to come back to us. Okay. And then the other, oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss? Yeah, Mark, I'm sorry.
So just a question. Do we know the school committee voted in favor of that? So they voted in favor of a contract that was not finalized. Is that correct?
My understanding is they voted in favor to support the 45% that we had talked about. But I guess that from what I understand, the contract is still being negotiated. The exact terms and nuances are still being negotiated with D.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, and then the other thing is consider waiving building permit fees for residents with restoration work related to the severe storm that occurred on May 15th, 2020. Oh, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, you go, after you.
I was going to say, I was glad to see it because we sort of traditionally have done this, at least as long as I'm on the board, probably before that. The idea is people got enough problems with dealing with front of electricians and tree cutters that last thing to do is need to nick them for a permit fee. So we usually forgive it.
Yeah, I know we have certainly in the past forgiven it, and I would certainly agree that these folks have enough hassle that they have to deal with, and if a little bit of consideration that the town can give them to waive fees, I think is in order here.
Make a motion to.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion to approve waiving permit fees for residents with restoration work related to the severe storm of Friday, May 15th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mark?
Yes.
Scott?
So actually, Andrea, one moment. There's a question here from Christina Green.
Oh,
Before
how
we
come I
vote,
can't?
she was asking if that would be covered by their homeowner's insurance, why we would waive it if it's assuming it would be covered by insurance.
I guess one of the reasons, first of all, I don't know if everybody's homeowner's insurance would waive it. Secondly, I don't know if everybody is going to be filing a claim with their homeowner's insurance. It could be that the damage and what they may need is either, doesn't meet the deductible, or for whatever reason, the homeowner may decide, may make a decision that it's in their best interests not to file a claim, or they may be filing a claim and then their homeowners is all going to go up. So in light of what I think is probably not a substantial cost to the town, I just think it's a considerate thing to do for our residents. That's just my opinion. Mark.
Yeah, so Heather had asked me that question, and I did inquire of Jody some input, and I agree with you, Andrea, of all the points that you raised. I know there was a decent amount of damage in our neighborhood, and a lot of people are not filing the insurance claims because it either just barely made over their deductible, and the permit fees are rather small for the number of people who are going to be filing. So, so I agree.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. So,
Nope. I think you're good.
okay. So we did have a motion in a second. So, Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I. Okay. We're at our 7:30 item, update for the community on the COVID-19 situation and an impact on the residents of town operations during this period. So Jody, do you want to take over?
Sure. So I think most of you know that the governor did propose a phased reopening plan, and that plan included mandatory workplace safety standards for reopening. The town has, as you know, been currently providing most town services throughout the pandemic, with the exception of the senior center, which has changed to mostly remote. Although I did hear they did a Kimball Farm ice cream for Mother's Day that somehow I missed, but and the library and recreation. So the town is in the process of finalizing our protocols. I was on a conference call, a virtual meeting with the governor's office again today, and they actually did not mean for municipal offices to open right now, except for essential services. So what we are doing, we have a protocol reopening that we've been working out with the department heads. We've ordered plexiglass for several offices. We're looking at staffing, continuing remote, and so on. This week, we actually added an outdoor shade tent and a picnic table with a plexiglass divider. And so we are setting up meetings with residents outside. We've been doing that all along, but not giving them a place to sit down, and plexiglass and some shade. It's so popular that we're going to add a second one. We're reusing our farmers market shades tents, so we haven't used those. But, our offices are tightly staffed. As you know, we have not a lot of space. We did have an employee test positive for COVID, so we do have some concerns about that. But we're working on it. I'm not aware that we're not satisfying everyone's needs. And as soon as we feel comfortable and the governor has given us the go-ahead to open the doors, we will do so. But if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I do, Andrea. Jody, so when I read the governor's the presentation that was in our packet, I couldn't help but wonder what the new normal was. Have you received any information about what that, sort of the end game for this looks like? Will we always be 6 feet apart, or is there any indication?
We again, we had the conference call today. I think it's kind of a wait and see. Luckily, our numbers in the state have been tracking lower, which is good. But they're not sure whether this reopening is going to cause any kind of surge. They're still talking about summer camps. We're supposed to get information on that next week. It sounds to me like they're going to allow them with special considerations, but they talked about school next year and how it might be even splitting the schools up into 2 different sessions, things like that. So I don't think they know. It just depends if a vaccine is found. But for the time being, we need to still protect ourselves and hope for the best.
Thank you.
So just, I do have a picture of our tent. If Eric, if you want to see it, Eric, can you pull that up? And I also have a picture of the ballot box. Let's see if we get the tent. Nope. Let's see if he's able to do this. I'm not, Eric. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is one of our shade tents. You can see the little table and the plexiglass. Again, if you come to the town hall and you want to see us, we'll come out. The numbers are out there on a sign, which Eric, I think you can show the sign. And we do this by appointments and even appointments with you all. So again, we're adding a second one. They're temporary. The sign, you can't really read it, but it explains to the residents what to do. And then why don't you show that election ballot box while you're at it. I went in the town hall and worked a little bit yesterday on the holiday, and I did take these pictures. I think as of last week, we had 400 ballots returned. I'm sure it's much more than that now. So anyway, we're here to serve you. We're going to keep working on this plan. And if anyone has any questions, please email me. We meet every Wednesday and we're moving forward.
Great.
Thank you for doing that.
Thanks.
So,
So Mark?
yeah, so when we do go back into the selectmen's room, are we going to have plexiglass in between the 5 of us?
So at this point, public meetings still need to be held virtually. They have not raised the 10-person within 6 feet limit. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think you're handling the virtual meetings so well that I think we'll just keep doing this until they give us that go ahead. But public meetings are still supposed to be held virtually in these phases.
Okay.
Okay.
So then do you want to
Go
move to
ahead.
the next item? So
Yep.
as you know, you all voted to delay the town meeting until June 20th, and June 20th is coming very quickly. So staff and I have been working very hard on giving you options for this. I will say that Patty Doobie has researched. There are many towns that are going to be holding outdoor town meetings, and I've got a whole slew of them where they're going to be the fields, parking lots, whatever. I haven't heard of too many holding them indoors, but some are holding them in gyms and so on. But so what staff and I have been doing is we went out to WA a couple of times. I want to thank the WA custodians and the school staff. But we've made a few renditions of this, and thank you, Jeremy, for this. But I think we've got a pretty good plan here. We streamlined the warrant. I don't know whether you'll agree with it or not, but we tried to get down to the bare minimum we needed to do, and the selectmen do have the authority to do that. We thought a 10 a.m. opening or starting the meeting with the moderator hoping to announce that we're trying to keep it to about an hour if possible. The reason for that is because we are outside. I didn't want to get a tent. I can. It's about $7,000. I don't think it'll fill this whole field. But we were going to hopefully have a pre-virtual meeting where people could really ask questions if they had them, because this is streamlined warrant. We wanted to put the chairs, and you can see it on the map. They're on the 15-yard or 15 feet goal lines. So they'd be 15 feet apart, not 6, and then side to side, 8 to 10 feet apart. So we're definitely giving a lot of room. You see up at the right or at the front of the field, you all would be spaced out too, at least 6 feet. 8 to 10 is our preference. We've got a few tables. We don't think everybody needs a table, but some of us like me who bring mountains of paper would prefer to have a table, so we can put more. The moderator and the town clerk and town council assisting her would be up on a stage, the stage they use for graduations. The check-in, you can see we have lines down at the bottom of right of your screen. A through M would go to the left. We will have people monitoring them, telling them 6 feet apart, making sure masks, and N through Z would go to the right and then be funneled in and 6 feet space, kind of like Market Basket. That's what we were using as our guide. You'll see the check-in table. We've got people 6 feet apart. Yeah, I got a little arrow there. IT there. I did send you all a text today with the video, which I can play if you want, of the PA system. It was excellent. We did a few tests of it, and we could hear very, very well. You can see I have 3 mics in the front for our residents and then 2 in the middle. And then of course, a presenter mic up at the front. We could add more microphones, you know, if we want. We were going to put signs, say, please don't touch the mic. But if somebody couldn't help themselves, we'll have custodians with Lysol to clean the mic. The front near the moderator, that would be all of the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and Finance Committee properly spaced. We would have department heads all grouped in one area together. And let's see, what else? No video presentation, but we would have a handout with the motions document that was sanitized. We would put the budget in there that we are presenting, so people would have that in one document. We'd have tellers in a certain area ready to count. There are bathrooms, not many, but there are bathrooms down near the concession, and they would leave the school open. But of course, we're hoping very few people would need them so that they aren't subjected to contact. I think that's pretty much it. And if you like this plan, we will present to you what we streamline in the warrant. But I think it's a plan to keep many people safe. It's not perfect. I think it's safer than indoors, and it would allow us to go forward with our town meeting. I think what our concerns are is what if there is a resurgence in the fall? We moved the town meeting to the fall, and we're in a worse situation then. So we felt it was a good way to get started.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I have another picture. I didn't know about this one. We're kind of half in between pictures, Eric.
For some reason, it looks like, oh, there it goes.
Yeah. I mean, the other one is a little probably easier to read. So that's it.
Okay, I'm sure that there are comments and questions. So Mark.
Yeah, I don't have any, I think it's fantastic. I'd absolutely do this. I don't know if the meeting's going to be an hour or 5 hours, but I think this is the right way to go. I think we need to get on with getting on, and this seems to be a safe way to make it happen. And I guess the only question I have is, do we have a rain date?
So I meant to mention that if you do move forward with this, you will be signing the warrant, and the moderator, if it rains, the moderator and the town clerk show up at the meeting and they continue the meeting to a date that we could already have discussed. We thought that if there was a light sprinkle, people could bring their umbrellas and we could handle a light sprinkle. The microphones can, but if it's a rain, obviously not. The other thing is, without a tent, we thought people could wear a hat. They could bring an umbrella if they had issues with sun. And some people think it would be fun, a little more casual, a little different, show that we were able to continue our town government even in a pandemic. But I'm open to criticism or just a complete pull the plug.
Tom?
No criticism from me, Jody. I think this looks like the right plan. My main concern is that people who have been very active in town government for a long time, who might be in a high-risk category, may still feel like this is too much. I don't think there's an alternative, though. I think that we have to move forward. But with respect to those folks, you mentioned that there'd be kind of a detailed information session. If we picked a date for that, and what do you kind of foresee the format of that being? Because that's how I see a lot of the seniors and others who might consider themselves to be in a high-risk category. I see that's how they'll really have their voice be heard in this case.
So what I would say is I had no idea whether you were going to like this plan or not. So I did not pick that date. What I did discuss with Andrea is what I would propose is you have a virtual BOS FinCom school committee meeting that people can virtually attend to go through the warrant, answer questions, go through the budget, and have that deep, in-depth discussion, and then hopefully vet most of that out. So then when we got together here, of course, the shorter period of time we're together, the safer it is for everyone too. And definitely the high-risk people we want to keep as safe as possible. We could even do an area in the back with even more space if people wanted, or certainly up to, you know, any kind of ideas.
Elizabeth, and then Scott.
Sure, I have a few questions. I thought we had left it at the last meeting that we were going with the 1/12 budget. So I was surprised to see this. I was just wondering, Jody, if this, I was still concerned about safety, not just the people together, but the heat on the field, and wondering if that's going to keep people away as well, besides concerns about gathering, just the being out there in the middle of the sun.
Well, the meeting starts at 10 a.m. Again, I can put up a tent for $7,000. It might not cover the whole area, but it could cover people that wanted to have it cover. We could look at fans too. If it was a heat wave that day, we could continue the meeting. I mean, it's not perfect. If you all directed me to go to a 1/12, and that was a final decision, I don't recall it that way. I don't recall you telling me to cancel the town meeting, but I don't know. Maybe I got it wrong. But we are ready. If you want to go to a 1/12 budget, we will present that at your next meeting. So,
That's fine. Tom can
Elizabeth,
go ahead. I do have more questions, but Tom, I didn't know if you had something just about that.
Well, just, yeah, it was about your question, Elizabeth. So
Sure.
with Elizabeth's concerns in mind, I wonder if we could have a couple of shade areas and greater distancing areas for seniors or people who may be more comfortable in that environment. I think that's a thoughtful, way to try to be as accessible as we can to everybody.
happy
Thank
to.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need at least some shade. And then, so the governor, am I understanding this correctly, that gatherings of more than 10 people are still discouraged or banned, but town meetings are okay? Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, people were asking today about outdoor, and I think there's some more flexibility for outdoor. He's opened golf courses, beaches, things like that. So, but you're right. I mean, the indoor 10 people still banned, except
Right.
town meeting.
Okay. And has our Board of Health looked at this plan?
Yeah, I think Jeff Stevens has, but the Board of Health probably, I don't know if they,
Okay.
honestly,
Or
I
Jeff, yeah.
have to, I'll text Jeff. I'm not positive. They may
Okay.
have, I don't know.
I saw that they weighed in on Neshoba's Neshoba Tech's graduation.
Right.
And so in that way, I would feel better if our Board of Health or Jeff Stevens had looked at this, and that we knew that someone working in the public health sector had reviewed this plan as well.
Jeff Stevens definitely has. He's been involved in
Okay.
the department head meetings. I think he's all on board, but I'll text him right now if they did.
Okay. All right, and I guess my last comment is I would be very surprised if we could keep town meeting to 1 hour, even with the preview meeting and discussion. I think it's a minimum of a few hours once we get people together in one space and have microphones. I think there will be people that want to talk.
Again, the biggest consideration, honestly, was the bathrooms, and because that's a place that people touch surfaces. So we were hoping that we could avoid a lot of people using the bathrooms.
Right.
Again, it's not perfect, but we looked at going to a representative even on a temporary basis, and that would take, unless there's legislation, that would take 6 months. So that's not a viable option. I think, it's more than just the 1/12 budget. We have items on the warrant, if you want to go look at that we feel we would like to get moving on, and it would just stop that. And I'm trying to keep town operations as normal as possible and keep people as productive as possible. So that's our reason of thinking this might work. But
Andrea, can I chime in with a question here from Beth Morrison?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if you saw that one. Beth was asking how changes to a motion would be dealt with
Right.
no screen.
Right. That's actually one of my questions. I was going to raise the same issue, but go ahead,
And me as
Jody.
well. So,
Yeah, I mean, how are we going to deal with, changes to a motion, amendments, when there is no screen?
Well, again, we have streamlined this warrant, so we're hoping that there would not be a lot of amendments to the motion, but if there are, they would be repeated. I mean, I've been going to town meeting for 6 years, and they didn't have computers too much when I started. We didn't put things up on the screen like we do now. It's wonderful, but I think the moderator or town council or whomever can read the motion with the amendment, and that's how we do it instead of technologically advanced ways. I mean, think of how they did it back in, 1700s.
Okay. Scott, before I get back to Mark, Scott, did you have any questions or comments?
so I can't do math. How many people can we fit in this scheme?
I think it's
315.
around 300, but we would have overflow in the bleachers if need be, and we would make sure that people were spacing 6 feet apart. So, I did get a message from Jeff Stevens. Do you want to hear about the Board of Health?
Sure.
Okay, he said, I asked, did the Board of Health weigh in on town meeting in the WA field? And he said, yes, they did on May 11th. I think I sent you, they were interested in virtual options and appropriate social distancing measures. So right now there's no virtual option. I've been asking for that for 6-7 weeks. So social distancing, we are planning to enforce that, and that people will be required to wear masks. So if they did somehow pass somebody within 6 feet, hopefully they're protected, just like Market Basket and Whole Foods and Stop and Shop and all the other grocery stores.
And so presumably we would have.
And actually go ahead, Scott.
Okay. I guess we're going to say that there'll be no secret ballot voting, because I don't expect there to be one, but every year we end up having one. One year, even on the budget, we had one. I'm guessing we don't really want to have our counters exposed to 300 people filling out pieces of paper. So just, I guess we can't rule that out because it has happened in the past and on the budget. So I just want to make sure we have thought about that.
I think we did think about it. I mean, people could vote by secret ballot. They could put it in a slot in a box in 6 feet apart, and we can spray it all down with Lysol and have gloves to count them. So, I mean, I guess I would like to think the voters were trying to help us do our business and stay safe and not complicate it even more, but we will be prepared.
No, I'm not arguing with that. Just saying that, the governor has said that we can't have outdoor graduations, even with limited attendance until July or August. But on the other hand, you can have a town meeting with a far more potentially fragile population. I'm just trying to figure out the logic here, and I'm not really seeing one, but okay.
Okay. There's a question from Beth Morrison, and actually it follows up on the comment about a virtual town meeting. And will town meeting be filmed by Westford Cat?
Yes, Westford Cat was with us down there, and they can film it. And I believe from the moderator, it can be live if we assist them in getting a SIM something.
Right. A SIM card.
Thank you, SIM card.
Okay. Scott?
I guess one of the questions dealt with, and I've spaced on it for a second. So my Rick Perry moment. It'll come back to Mark. Do you have a question first?
Okay.
Sorry.
Mark,
No,
and then
go
Tom.
ahead. I'll get, don't worry. I'm not shy. I'll get mine in. Go ahead.
Mark or Tom, one of you. Okay.
All right. Here we go. So we're not going to solve all the answers, all the questions tonight. I think what we need to do is either say that we like this idea, and then pose all the questions and make sure Jody and her staff are ready to address them, maybe at our next meeting. But I think it's a huge positive sign for us to move forward as normal as possible with the proper precautions to allow the town to run. People are going to grocery stores, people are getting their haircuts, people are doing all this stuff and doing it in a way that's respectful of the rules and everybody's space. And I think the way that this field is laid out and the way that it's been constructed does exactly that. As a matter of fact, it's more space than what is required on an individual basis. If there were no other options, I would have done the 3/12 budget, not a 1/12 budget, to at least move us forward. But this is a better result than what I thought was going to be able to happen at the football field. The average high for June 20th is 78 and the low is 61. At 10 o'clock in the morning, it's probably not going to be above 70 degrees if it's not raining. And I think this is ideal. I think we need to get on and allow the town and the staff to take its charge for fiscal 21 and move on.
Can I just interject? Just so you know, we did look at things like where the sun's going to be in the sky and how it passes through the sky and how we arrange the voters' seats. So actually the select boards will be looking more at the sun than the others, but we thought visors or hats would help. So we did look at many, many different things. We had a lot of people out there trying to
Make
figure
sure I
this
get
out.
my 30 sunscreen, we'll be fine.
Okay. Scott, did you remember your question?
Yes, I did. It was, so I guess, I don't know you want to discuss the warrant after we make a decision, but I think the timing of town meeting depends upon the warrant. So one question I had was, we have several, I believe, citizen petitions. Are those required to be on the warrant if they've been filed? And if so, we're not going to get that in an hour.
Yes, so I did talk to council about that. What council suggested, if the Board of Selectmen did not want to get into depth in the citizen petitions, that you would tell town meeting that you would agree to put those on the next town meeting warrant, not require additional signatures, but you would just agree to put those on and move forward in that fashion. And if the town meeting liked that, they could vote to pass over, knowing it would go on the next warrant. If they didn't, then they would proceed. I believe 2 of the citizen petitions, the person that submitted them wants to pass over them anyway. So it would really be 4 of the citizen petitions, but that would be how you would handle it.
Okay.
Tom, I know.
Just briefly, my thinking on this has changed quite a bit. The more I think about it, the more I think if we're waiting to have town meeting like it used to be, we could be waiting for a very, very long time. And I think the idea of pushing to come up with the best solution we can right now with what we know right now is a good one and a right one. So I like that you've done this, Jody, and it's a little bit different, but the more I thought about what was going to be significantly different until there's a vaccine, I came back to the thought that we should make our very best effort to do the best we can now. The other point I have is very small. We could convene using this tool for public communication during the meeting, and if anyone had to amend any language, it should certainly be possible to amend it. And if people with their small screens following the meeting using this tool, they could check and see. So I think technology exists with some forethought that would let us preserve a lot of the elements that we're used to in town meeting.
Okay, I know that Susan Spula has a comment, so let me unmute her. Susan? Okay. Okay, Susan, you're unmuted. Susan, if you have muted yourself, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, well, if she's out there, she'll chime in, okay? I have very mixed feelings about this, to be perfectly honest. And I know that there is no perfect solution. And I know that in some ways we are basically trying to, trying to make the best decision that we can. That being said, I am still concerned about safety. And I know that we've taken all the precautions that we absolutely can, and I commend Jody and everybody who has worked on that to do that. But I am still concerned about safety. I am concerned about the weather, less so about rain, because we can have a rain date, as about sun and the heat. Maybe the average temperature is 78 degrees, Mark, but you know what? It was 82 degrees today here, in Westford. So
Yeah.
it's not out of the realm of possibility that we have a very warm day. And I've also heard from folks that field itself, because it's artificial turf, heats up, under the hot sun. So I am concerned about the weather, and I am concerned about heat and people who, may be affected by the heat. So I think that if we are going to do this, it really is imperative that we have an area of shade where folks can be able to sit away from the turf or under a tent. So I think that is really important. I still, other things, I think if we're going to do this, I think we really need to consider, obviously, everybody has to have masks, but I think in case somebody shows up with a mask, we should have extra masks available for people. I think we should have sunscreen available for people. If people show up without sunscreen and in the middle of the, meeting, if it goes longer than an hour, may need sunscreen. I think we should have water there for people, to be honest, if they need water. I know, and that raises health issues again and safety issues, but I think that these are things that need to be considered. And as you said, Mark, we're not going to answer all of these questions tonight, but I am throwing out these issues as things that do need to be considered if we're going to do this on June 20th. And I do remain concerned that, and there probably is no way around this, but I remain concerned that there will be a segment of our population that is just disenfranchised from voting at our town meeting and being able to participate in our town meeting. And, I understand that may happen, but that is, I still need to voice that concern on my behalf, at least on what my thinking is. So that's where I'm sort of coming from. Jody?
Mark is first. I'll go next.
So thanks, Jody. So Andrew, I agree with everything that you said. The one point I'd make about the disenfranchised part is, if we wait and defer, everybody's disenfranchised, right? No one's having a vote on anything until we do a 3-month budget. It's not, people aren't voting on anything until August or September. And if we're waiting for a vaccine, well, you can forget about it. It'll be the March 2021 annual town meeting at best. And so, I think what this does is it provides, not for everyone. And to be honest, even at Abbott wasn't working for everybody, right? We moved it from May to March so that we get more people who were playing soccer, with the kids in soccer, and everybody has to show up on Saturday. And lo and behold, guess what? There's a lot of those people who have other issues in March, just like they did in May. So we're always going to disenfranchise someone. The most important thing that we can do is allow the town to run. And if we do something virtually beforehand, where we get the concerns of people ahead of town meeting and start and get the input of people who are not going to feel comfortable coming, then we're trying to incorporate as much as possible. But I don't think putting it off, if we have viable options, is we're certainly we're disenfranchising the whole town at that point in time.
Yeah, no, I know, and if we wait till October, who knows? There could be a second surge, in which case we can't hold it at all. So like I said, there's no real good solution here at the end of the day. We're just trying to pick the best one based on the information, all the information that we have available to us at this point in time.
Yep.
Jody.
So I'll remind you, it has snowed a few times in October, and so it's a little colder then. But I did get a message from Susan. She just wants you to know she's all set, and she thinks this can work. And also Patty Doobie was down there. Susan was down there too, and Patty is very comfortable with the way we set this up. So
Emily Teller has raised a question, has asked, could we begin at 9 a.m.?
fine with me.
Start at 6 for crying out loud. We don't have to worry about any of this.
I agree, but there aren't as many people
Nice
like you
and
and Mark who are up at 6. So
Yeah.
I do favor an earlier start time.
yeah,
You know,
so do
if we
I do
start
too.
checking in at 8 and start the meeting at 9, the more we can do in the cooler, part of the day rather than being out there at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I think would be better for everyone.
I think that makes sense.
I agree.
Scott?
If we're going to do this, I would add to Andrea's wish list, or not wish list, need list, hand sanitizing stations, because if someone does touch something inadvertently, they have to have some way to take care of that, and can't everyone remember to bring their own with them. So
I'd be happy to participate in finding a solution for that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Scott. Not only, and also available, outside bathrooms that are going to be used. So, and by the microphones, because, people are going to touch the microphone. They just can't help themselves, not deliberately. It's just it's human nature. Okay.
they want to change the height. Everyone wants to change the height, and even if they
Right.
don't have to, yeah.
Actually, I think that you've just made a good point, Scott. We could have mics at different heights, so we're not changing them. If you're 6 foot, go to that mic. If you're 5'4", go to this mic. Maybe we'll do that.
Oh, you're going to single people out. They're not going to be happy.
Yeah, really.
Susan's happy with the earlier start time. I'm just thinking people drinking
Yeah.
coffee, going to the field. Now they gotta, whatever.
We
Okay, 9:30.
can't solve. We can't solve it all. No, I like 9. We can't solve everything. So, Elizabeth.
I do have one other question, and this may just be something to think about before the day. So if everyone's wearing a mask and we have 200 people spread out over the entire football field and we take a voice vote, I'm just wondering how that's going to sound, or if we need to plan for all votes to be, standing hand votes or something. I don't want to be encouraging people to be taking their masks on and off all day and speaking loudly. That seems to be counterproductive to what we're trying to do. So I think we should think about a voting format.
I think electronic voting would be great.
Oh, we just had a comment that we should have clickers.
Yeah. Too bad.
That was one of my ideas that failed, but what we can do, and I don't remember it, honestly, if we've done this in Westford, but in other towns, is we give a paper, a colored paper, and then when it's time to vote, you hold up your hand with that paper in the hand. It makes it easier for the moderator to see. We could certainly do something like that to get away from the loud voices. And Susan is all for earlier. She's getting earlier and earlier.
And then we have a question, Denny Wood, will there be a warrant review this year? And I think we're planning that there will be a review and a pre-meeting virtual meeting where we review the articles that are on the warrant, right, Jody?
Yes, I think that Denny's probably talking about a WCAT warrant review. The only thing I'd say is the clock is ticking here. This is coming very quickly. So you actually, if you like this plan and want to continue with your January, or I'm sorry, looking at my calendar, your June 20th town meeting, you need to close the warrant 14 days before. We have to post it. So the clock is ticking here and we have a lot of work to do. So just recognize that.
I agree, the clock is ticking and there's a lot of work, but I also think that if we are going to do this, then as much as we can do pre-meeting virtually, whether it's through Westford Cat, a pre-meeting forum where people can ask their questions that can then be rebroadcast leading up to the meeting. I think we need to do as much of that as possible so that the community and the residents are educated. Tom.
Just a brief point, Andrew. So you were at the Westford Cat annual meeting. So we can do something with polling. We can do something that involves access for a lot of people. If Mike Wells can be available, we could set a date very soon and basically run a meeting on the same format. We could ask people polling questions throughout, and I think we'd get a really good sense of what the will of the people is. And I think we'll feel like we've really done our best for people that aren't, given the situation, able to come.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to help because Mike and I did a lot of work in preparation for that, if that's useful.
Great. I think that would be useful.
I definitely think the virtual meeting of the joint boards, that's not what I was referring to. I thought they meant the warrant review meeting, which is on a separate night where we go article by article and get filmed. I think that's what he was referring to, and I'm not sure whether we'll have time, but definitely think a virtual multiple board meeting is important.
Elizabeth?
So I think if it's possible to fit them in, both might be nice so people can have the 1 hour summary, the warrant review that usually happens, and then have I think it'll be several hours long if there's a joint boards meeting. We're going through article by article and discussing it. It might need to be 2 separate events if they can schedule it.
Yeah, I would agree. It goes back to my comment. I just think we have to do as much as possible in any format and in all formats and forums.
Right.
Actually wish the candidates night was going to be live, similar to what we're trying to do with the warrant review. Would be much more effective. But
So if the board if you want to vote this to move forward with this town meeting, I think that would be what I would need to get this thing completed, and of course open to all suggestions.
So I'll make the motion to have the annual town meeting on the Westford Academy Trustees Field on June 20th, starting at 9 a.m. with input on questions or concerns back to Jody by when you want them, Jody, when you want all your input.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Jody.
Okay, I just got a note from Susan that Ellen Hardy, who is out there watching us, just weighed in. The bylaws require 10 a.m. start, so we cannot start at 9 a.m. I'm sorry, we booked it at 10 a.m., so I did not look at that, but so it would have to start at 10 a.m. And any input as soon as possible.
The bylaws require town meeting to start at 10 a.m. Under no circumstance can that be changed.
I was going to say, is there some way, given the fact that we are in a COVID-19 pandemic emergency, that we can, suspend that bylaw for this one time?
I don't think so, but if we can, if there's a way, I will move it to 9 a.m., but I will have to pull that out and check on it and see whether there's legislation that's been proposed to allow us to change times, but I will
maybe
check.
And ask town council, Jody?
Oh yeah, no, I will follow up.
All right, so the motion then, I'll just say with a preference to 9 a.m., but no later than 10 a.m. start.
Second.
Hang on 1 minute. Okay.
Actually, Patty Doobie just weighed in and she said, same as town election, it's a no-go. So it has to be 10 a.m.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? I don't see any further comments or questions. Emily Teller did ask, can the first voted annual town meeting be to change the bylaws to be a 9 a.m. start? It's certainly
Yeah.
something we consider in the future, but not this time.
Put it in October, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe in October. Okay, so we had a motion in a second. I don't see any further questions. Wait a minute. Jody, there was one last question. When do you want input as in terms of how the June 20th meeting is going to be conducted? I think you said
I
it's
mean,
just,
as soon as possible. As soon as
Okay.
possible. Yep.
why don't we tell folks just so that they have a specific deadline that you want all comments by the end of this week? Okay,
I
Or
try to
Friday,
be
May-
flexible.
Friday,
I know,
May
but-
29th at 5 p.m.
That will be all right too.
okay. All right, I think that's it. So with a motion and a second, Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so now Jody, we've made that decision. Would you like to run through what you would like to put on the warrant?
So, yes, actually, I'm going to have Dan walk us through just so you don't have to hear from just me all the time. But this basically what we're proposing matches the timeline that you've already approved in terms of what we could punt to October and so on. So we have the whole document. We did not do the motions. Something's going on. I think I just got kicked off. Okay, so
We can hear you.
okay, well, he brought Dan on. That's fine. Hold on one second. Wait a minute. He prematurely knocked me off. That's okay, Eric. So we have the index here to show you in a simple format, but we can also go right through the warrant after. And if you do like this, we're having you vote to reopen, make changes, and close the warrant tonight. As I said, it has to be posted on June 6th. If you don't like it, then you tell us tonight. We will edit it and get that prepared. So Dan, do you want to take over now?
Eric, before Dan takes over, can you make your screen a little bit bigger so for those of us who are visually impaired can see it a little bit easier?
How's that?
Very
Okay.
good.
And Dan will walk us through the changes, but stop us at any time that you're not happy.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
And so we have a very pared down warrant here for you tonight. We color coded it, which is something new. All the yellow articles we're requesting to remain on the agenda. The aqua articles are ones that we're recommending to move to the special town meeting. And the ones with no color, we're just recommending that we remove from the warrant. Altogether, we have 12 items that we want to bring forward for discussion to the annual town meeting. We're recommending that 7 of those are consent items. And then, of course, we have to go through the process of delaying the citizen petitions if they're willing to do so, as Jody just discussed. So I'll run through these pretty quickly because we've seen them before. Number 1 is accept town reports. We're recommending that for the consent agenda. Article 2 is approve unpaid bills. We don't have any, so we're just recommending removing those. Article 3 is the supplemental appropriations for 2020. The only ones we had left on there were the 400,000 for the schools, which we're recommending delaying to October, and the $200,000 for the OPEB, which again can wait till October. The budget transfers, we already took care of that police transfer at the May 12th meeting, so we don't need that article anymore. Amending the wage and classification plan. This actually does not require a town meeting vote. It can be done so by Jody and the Board of Selectmen. So we're wondering if you're open to bringing that to the June 9th meeting.
So let me just jump in here if I can, Dan. So this is basically the forming of the DPW. I think Eric's might be giving me my face back up here. Oops, what happened? So, you know, this has the wage and classification, which would form the DPW director and the office manager, the assistant, Larry Pinero's position. And also we have the former operations supervisor, that's Kevin Lynch. We negotiated to put it out of the warrant. So the charter does allow me to do this with your approval. Traditionally, we have put this on the town meeting warrant to streamline. We thought maybe you would just discuss this on June 9th and see if you voted in favor. If you don't like that, we can certainly leave it on the warrant.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't like, I mean, you know, I'm completely in favor of it, but I don't like the fact that we would take something as significant as this and take it off the warrant, to be honest.
That's absolutely fine with me. I'm happy to leave that on the warrant. Just trying to streamline.
I
would agree with Mark that we're basically forming a new town. Well, we're either forming or told that they change it to the town structure. To the votership is looking at that. So I'm with Mark.
Yeah, I would agree as well.
Okay, so we will, Dan, you can go ahead and change the color of that one, or and I'll give this back over to Dan.
Okay, I actually can't do this, change the color because it's from the packet, but we will make that change for you. Okay, moving on. Article 6 is approved capital appropriations. We have pared down the list and we're recommending moving several of those to the October special town meeting, but we do need several articles approved at this point. Article 7 is the sale of cemetery lots appropriation. We're recommending moving forward with. 8 is the new building at 51 Main Street that we're recommending moving to October. Article 9 is community preservation recommendations. 10 is prochlorate expenses. We're only recommending bringing forward half the appropriation at this time, or $55,000, and the second part can be delayed until October. 11 is revolving funds. We're recommending this for the consent agenda. 12 is the FY21 operating budget.
So let me just
13.
stop. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I stop you right there, Dan?
Yes.
Okay, so one thing that if we're moving forward, which of course we didn't know that we were until tonight, I would be seeking direction from you at your next meeting. Hold on, I'm trying to get my picture back up there, on whether you wanted us to make changes to the fiscal year 21 budget. As many of you have heard, we are being told that we may have significant state aid reductions. We won't probably even know that figure till August, but we would put this on your June 9th agenda if you want us to make reductions to the fiscal year 21 budget based on revenue projections and things like that. So anyway, that doesn't mean we're saying go forward with the budget we've already done. So just wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
Okay, I'll jump back on here. See, next up is this Chapter 90, authorizing the highway funds for the consent agenda. Then we have water OPEB is Article 14 for the consent agenda. 15 is the ability for Board of Selectmen to accept easements for the consent agenda. Now, these ones in blue, 16 through 18, are all for engineering projects that we're recommending moving to October, the appropriation. So it makes sense to move the acceptance of the easement as well. Articles 19, 20, 21, and 22 are all citizen petitions, so they would have to remain on the warrant. However, we could ask petitioners if we could dismiss or delay until October without them getting more signatures. Eric, if you want to scroll down. Eric, can you scroll down? There you go. Thank you. 23 is to merge the Affordable Housing Committee and Affordable Housing Trust into one committee. We're recommending that for the consent agenda. Article 24, we already recommended delaying to a future date. That was to reduce the number of Finance Committee books to be printed. So we're recommending removing that from the warrant. Next up, we have the start of the zoning bylaws, which in speaking with Jeff Morissette, he recommended doing all of these at once. So because each time we amend the zoning bylaws, we have to reprint the zoning book. So articles.
I'm just going to jump in again. Don't show my picture, please. I just want to remind the board that we have not gotten the state's approval to amend the charter to go to select board yet. And I don't think they're probably working on this right now. So we didn't see an issue with waiting till October since we haven't even received the first permission yet.
Mhm.
Okay, so those are articles 25 through 32, all zoning articles. Article 33 is to accept Jane Richards Road as a public way. We're recommending that for the consent agenda. And of course, Article 34 is the disposition of 63 Main Street, which again, if the petitioner is agreeable, we could move to the October special town meeting.
Actually, just to be clear, it's the town meeting would have to approve that, not the petitioner.
Thank you, Jody.
Okay. Comments, questions, Tom? I think you're on mute, Tom.
I'm trapped. Jody answered one of them, which is we'll get a chance to look at any potential changes to the budget. So thanks for that, Jody. And the other one was whether the capital recommendations lined up with the capital recommendations we'd seen in a previous meeting about what we needed to move forward with and what we could afford to wait on.
Yes, this all matches what you already voted on with the Finance Committee. So the timeline where we laid things out in different months, this matches that.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth?
I wanted to make a comment about 51 Main, probably as the select board member who spent the most time on that one. I would support waiting to vote on that until the October town meeting. I think the public needs time to understand that and the benefit of the education that would come with it, hopefully with a nice presentation. And I think it'd be more effective when the community has more mind share to understand that project and to consider it. And then I also agree with the zoning, similarly with the zoning, hopefully we could be in a better place so folks could have time to be educated and discuss those changes.
That's really why we kind of picked the ones we moved, because we're trying to keep this as brief as possible. And we know a lot of these things are going to take a lot of discussion. Jeff Morissette said he'd have to re-advertise the hearings on these, but he certainly understands and was agreeable if the board wanted to move them.
Any other comments or questions from the board? And I don't see any questions from our audience. So Jody, what do you need from us?
So I think what I'd like to do is pull up the warrant now so you can actually see the track changes on the warrant. Eric, if you could do that. We do have it in final shape too. So whether you want to see the track, maybe it's easier if you just see the final version versus the track changes. Which do you want to do?
The final version is fine with
Okay.
me.
All right. So sorry, Eric, if you could pull up the final version and then just, not that we have to read through it all, but you can take a look. We could just scroll down. You can see.
Jody, I'm sorry. Stan. We
Oh,
have to add
this is
back
the wrong
in-
one. Huh?
Yeah, we have to add back in the paying class article, so I'm working on that right now.
Okay, and this is the wrong one, Eric, anyway. I think.
That's what's in the packet, Jody.
Oh,
what's
I'm
in our
sorry.
packet,
Okay,
Jody.
okay, so we can start, no, that's fine. Let's start in knowing Eric or Dan's going to add back in the wage. So you've got the accept annual reports, then we have the capital. Again, capital planning did vote in favor of this too. While you're here, just while you're here, some of these things, can you go back up, Eric? Just FYI, while we're doing this, some of these items we actually might be able to get replacement costs for the CARES Act. The computers, particularly technology for town computers to assist with remote learning. We're going to apply for everything we can from the CARES Act, and they will replace technology. So the schools might be able to benefit from that too, if it was directly, attributable to this pandemic. So, okay, so these were all the critical needs. You want to scroll down, Eric, please? And then cemetery, community preservation. Again, we will do the motions tomorrow. We just didn't want to go through all that if you weren't in favor of this tonight. As Dan mentioned, the perchlorate will be half of what we had put in there, at least for the time being. And hold on one second. Revolving funds. Okay. You can go. Then the budget, and again, I'd want to understand if you wanted me to propose changes. I have been meeting weekly with Bill Olson and Ingrid on this. If you would like to see reductions suggested for the fiscal year 21 budget, we are prepared to do so. Mark is nodding yes. I guess it might be good for me to know that the majority of you were looking for some reductions.
Elizabeth?
What's the alternative, Jody? If we don't do it now, what would the process be and when would we do that? I'm sitting here thinking meeting in October is probably questionable at this point. So do we need to be, anticipating that we may not meet in October and be doing that work now?
So just as in 20, when all this happened, we did put a spending freeze. We stopped paying mileage. We stopped allowing meetings and conferences. We made changes to spend less. And actually the situation's even better than what we reported to you before because of some other things that have happened. So we don't need town meeting to vote the budget reductions to not spend the money. We won't spend the money if we don't have the money to spend. So I don't know if that helps, but I think what you would at least know is the limits that we felt we could begin to do. If the governor's budget, if the state aid is reduced by 20%, we're talking a $3.9 million deficit in our budget. We do have reserves, obviously, but that would be very difficult to fill. So I've been talking to Bill about ways that we can look at our operations now and possibly how we can streamline based on the remote operations we're doing right now. So that's what I'm working on. And I know Bill and Ingrid are beginning to work on that.
Tom?
So Jody, I'd be interested in knowing sort of what you would put on your list. I don't know if we'll vote for any cuts, but I think we should know what you're considering, in particular, what you already think you're going to not spend. And then just to give us a scale, kind of order of magnitude of what might be, a couple cases that we might see, depending on what the state is able to provide in terms of funding. So I don't know, without seeing them, I don't know that we necessarily want to, I can't speak now whether I'm in favor of making the
Right.
cuts or not, but I'd like to at least know what the scenarios are that you're working through.
Okay, I mean, some of them are pretty easy, gasoline. Some of them involve staff and, but certainly we will we've already put it together, but we will plan to present something to you on 6/9.
I think that would be helpful because, I'm sorry, Mark, I'll get you in a minute, okay? I think that would be helpful because I think, you know, we already know that we are in a budget deficit based on what you've already told us before we even get to what state aid may or may not be. So I think it would be helpful to start planning for that deficit that we already know about, you know, as sort of a, you know, first tier or whatever, and then start to think about, you know, other things that we may have to consider in a worst case scenario if it really turns out that we're in a 3.9 million deficit next year. So Mark? You're on mute, Mark.
Oh, no wonder everybody was happy. I was on mute. It's the obvious thing that we have to do, right? Every company in the country is doing the same thing. You've got to go through this exercise, whether we choose to make those choices or not, you know, is a completely separate thing. And there's also things that we could consider on the capital side. And while they are one-time potentially, but I've brought this up before, you know, this requirement that we refund the capital contingency for the purchase of 63 Main Street when we made it is something that we could bring to the town and say, we're suggesting that we alter the timing of that instead of making it this year to kind of help the cash reserves a little bit, that we add a year at the back end, but not fund it this year. So I think there's a whole lot of things that we need to consider once we understand what it is. And then, you know, like you guys said, that whether we make that choice or not is a completely separate thing, but we owe it to the taxpayers to do that.
And Jody, I think that if we're going to do that on the 9th, that we need to invite the school committee and the FinCom to our meeting so that they can see the impact and also so we can receive any comments or feedback that we have for them.
Yes, happy
Scott.
to do that. Oh, may I just say one thing?
Go ahead, Jody.
On
Yep.
Mark's comment, we did move the refunding the capital stabilization to October for discussion. So that's not something we're asking people to do here at the upcoming meeting. So.
Okay.
Scott?
Yeah, so what, what my company is doing, what other companies are doing is saying, here's a set of assumptions and here's our reaction to that. So rather than saying, here's what, we could cut here, here, and here, I think from my own standpoint, here's what happens if we have our expected local revenue losses, but state aid is constant. That's sort of our best case budget. And then here's plan B, which is we lose local revenue and we lose, say, 20% of state aid. That's the second set of cuts. And then make it really, really, really clear that this is a what if, because remember about 7 years ago, we did a 5-year plan and had a 5-year plan deficit. And we heard, that, Westford's going to go bankrupt. So let's make it really, really clear that we're doing something smart and putting for contingencies and not actually right now making cuts.
So I will be ready for the town's portion of that. I do not know whether the schools will be ready to take that kind of plan or put something forward, but I am ready to put that forward on my side.
I think John Cunningham has his hand up. So John, I have unmuted you.
Thank you. Just wanted to see where the finance committee's meeting or fitting into this schedule, because it seems like we got a very short period of time that we're operating with, and the more information we can get, the better. as far as being able to participate in any kind of a meeting or joint meeting on the 9th? And is that going to be enough time that we can either let the voters know ahead of time, or I guess the book that we produced is going out the window. So anyway, I'm just concerned about the process here and making sure that we can get the finance committee together long enough to deliberate over this, or soon enough.
I certainly hear and understand your concern, John. You know, we're all working under, you know, a time pressure and a condensed time frame here. So, Jody?
I mean, I'm ready to go whenever you say meet. I don't think that the schools are there yet, but the town has done the work and we are ready. If you want to have a meeting before that, just let me know.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. And the thing is, I want to give this due consideration so we can be helpful, not a hindrance. And I just not sure seeing it for the first time on the 9th would be helpful, or that we could be that much help. But just understanding where that was one of the questions I had earlier. And we were going to try to set up a meeting just to discuss that. And so far, I don't have a consensus on that. But I think the finance committee needs to at least have something that we can take a look at and try to be helpful in it. At least, you know, I don't see any big issues with the budget, but it would be nice to kind of know where the cuts are going to be made and how we're going to be able to get through the next few months until we make decisions or get before the town meeting.
Mark?
So that's all I have to say. It's
Okay, thanks, John.
well, I appreciate the time this time.
What do we need to do, Jody, to, you know, the schools are 65% of the total. So it's important and interesting that, you know, you're ready and we need to hear that. But, you know, somehow we've got to hear from the schools, whether the answer is 0, we're not doing anything, or, you know, here are some things we can do or we are thinking about, you know, similar to what you've done. There's some things that are just natural. You know, what's the impact on, you know, the fuel and, you know, things of that nature? What does that buy us on their side? So I'd like to make a request that they at least take a shot at it. They've got 2 weeks to do it. And so even if it's real top level.
So what I would say is that you're giving me direction tonight that you are looking for some reduction in response to what's going on. And it sounds like maybe even a plan A or B. And I will pass that along to Bill. Again, we've been meeting and discussing it, but you know, at 3.9 million is a lot. And if you share that 65-35 or whatever, then you can do the math. So
yeah,
all I can do is tell him that you're looking for that information.
Yeah, so just one clarification. Sorry, Andrea. It's probably better coming from you to whoever the chair of the school committee is at this point in time. This is, you know, the administration works for the school committee. So I would suggest that the school committee ask the administration for whatever it is. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we're covering 3.9 million. I don't want anybody to be, you know, mistaken there. But we need to understand the choices, and I think not coming with anything is not acceptable.
Scott?
I have something actually need to talk to the school committee about, and it's probably early yet, but yeah, if what we're hearing for the fall is perhaps, you know, plays out, that we do have, you know, split school days, we have students eating in their classrooms at the cafeteria, you know, the school budget may need to go up, not down. So I think we need to have a discussion with the school committee just in general, you know, on where they see this thing going from a cost standpoint, because I agree we need to talk about a budget where we spend less, but you know, I think they may be talking about a budget where they need to spend more.
Tom?
From whose pocket?
Just
It's a state mandate. It's a state mandate, Mark.
Right.
I guess my only contribution here is that in times past when we've looked at school-related budgets, I think it'd be helpful if a couple scenarios came through and highlighted sort of what the backstops are. So traditionally, we've been unwilling to make budget choices that make the student-teacher ratio move outside the norms that we've established. So I'd just be interested, and I think the public would be interested in, within the guidelines that we have set around the way we want to educate our children, what is possible in terms of a reduction. And it may be that there's not very much. It may be that there is some, but you have to begin to look at those issues. I think that's just important for the public to know, not so we can make any decision. We're not going to, at least I'm not thinking that we would make that I would support a sudden, swerve decision in a week or two. But I think it's helpful at a high level if the schools reiterate sort of what parts of the budget are really dictated by policy choices like student-teacher ratio.
So I do think, and I just want to pick up on something. First of all, I think you're right, Tom. I don't think that we're going to be making any decisions in 2 weeks, but rather this is the start of planning for different scenarios based on, information that we don't have, but we're going to make some assumptions and plan for those scenarios. But I don't believe that we're actually going to be making decisions that we're going to be voting on reductions in the next 2 weeks without, really having more information than we have now. And then the second point I want to make actually, and maybe a bit contrary to what you're saying, is that I think that if we are looking at really very significant reductions, that everything has to be on the table, that we need to look at everything. And it may be that some of our assumptions that we have been living with over the last 10 to 15 years, in the short term while we get through this budget crisis because of COVID-19, have to be looked at and maybe adjusted. So I think it's really important on the town side, on the school side, for every single department here, and for all of us as responsible elected officials, that we really have to put everything on the table and look at it over the next months. Tom?
Yeah, I don't think I would disagree that a careful, thoughtful reconsideration, what does it mean in the COVID era? What does it mean in the way we're teaching? What I don't want people to think is that we're asking for a specific budget reduction proposal. At least I don't think that the good governance in this case would be to let this calendar drive us to where we're going to try to make sudden move choices in 2 weeks that require a lot of community input and thoughtful discussion. That's my main point.
I agree with you about that. So.
Okay, so do you want to move along or do you want to take a vote?
Do we need a complete review of this document?
Well, so
Yeah,
I was on the budget line item though. Are you asking me just to inform Bill that you're looking for some options?
Yeah, I guess from what I'm hearing from the folks here, and if I'm not right, I know one of you will chime in and correct me. But I think what we're looking for is both from you and Dan and Bill and Ingrid, at least a beginning discussion of where possible reductions can be made as we move forward in the COVID-19 era, depending upon the amount of our budget deficit. I think we already know that we've got, I think you told us, Jody, we already have, close to a $900,000 deficit right now. And so I think scenario A is how do we deal with that one? Scenario, C or D is what if it's $3.9 million, and are there scenarios in between there that we can begin to discuss? I personally don't expect to see a full-blown, presentation from you folks in 2 weeks, but I think it's at least a document that we can start to talk about and at least have some understanding of what you folks are thinking about that we can share with among all the boards and also with the community.
Okay.
Does
All right,
that capture what everybody's thinking?
Okay,
Okay,
so to move on, we have Article 8, which is the Chapter 90. Article 9, which is the OPEB for the water enterprise budget. Eric, are you out there? Okay, thank you. 10 is accepting your easements. This is a citizen petition about Article 11. I believe the proponent wants to dismiss this. Article 12, Indigenous Peoples' Day, citizen petition. Then this citizen petition for additional alcohol license. Article 14, I think probably the petitioner might be ready to dismiss that. That's the WCAT agreement. Then 15 was to merge the two affordable housing groups into one committee. We assumed the people living on Jenny Richards Road would deem that important and get that done. We left that. And then 17 is the disposition of 63 Main. So Dan, did you add back the wage classification, and what article is that?
Yeah, it's gonna be Article 2, so all the articles just right there will be one later.
Okay,
I did send that to you and Eric.
okay. Eric, can you pull that up, or is that too hard?
It'd take me a couple minutes if you want to
Okay,
wait.
well, that's fine. No, so that's in there. So if you all are happy with this warrant, then I would want you to vote to reopen the warrant and make these changes that we reviewed tonight, and then close the warrant and vote to sign it.
okay. I don't see any further comments or questions. So is there the first, Jody, the first vote we have to take is to reopen the warrant, is that correct?
Yes.
So
Okay,
moved.
so is there a second?
Second,
Okay, Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now what next, Jody, what do we vote to?
You want to approve all the
Approve the
changes
warrant.
that we made tonight, and then vote to close
Okay.
and sign the warrant.
So is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, but do we do those in two separate motions?
Doesn't matter.
So moved as one.
Second.
Okay. All right, Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So I think we are finished with that item, and now we're on to board reports and updates. Does anybody have any board reports or updates? Okay, seeing none. Jody, you're back. Town managers report.
Okay, so no vote is needed here, but I wanted to announce the anticipated bids to be received by the tax collector for the bond anticipation notes for purposes of town farm water tank project and road work, both authorized at March 23rd, 2019 annual town meeting. And you don't need a vote, but I do need you to come to the town hall to sign the paperwork. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Secondly, we have a request for approval of the following contracts. CBI Consulting LLC for limited structural assessment of 12 North Main Street in the amount of $49,996. A one-year contract extensions with Allstate Asphalt, PJ Albert, Superior Seal Coat for the Highway Department that were initially approved in May of 2019 at the prices in the packet. Purchase orders PJ Keating for paving roads in the amount of $300,000. CN Wood Company Inc. for an Elgin Pelican street sweeper that you just approved, I believe, at your last meeting in the amount of $207,812. PJ Albert for milling town roads in the amount of $31,000. Markings Inc. for line painting various roads amount of $28,000. Century Paving and Construction Corps for sidewalk repairs at Town Hall and Police Station, $21,500, and CDW Government for Chromebooks for the schools in the amount of $97,440.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So, second.
Any discussion or any comments? And I don't see any here, so all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Mark? You know I
Yes.
would do it once. Scott?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think this shows that many of our departments are very busy right now, out there still doing work for the town. So that's awesome.
Motion to
Absolutely.
waive reading of
I
the
have-
correspondence.
I have one question about that.
Sure, go ahead.
The memo from Carol Gumbart regarding the Adams property. Do we
Yeah,
need to take additional action on that? I was unclear from her memo if the Conservation Commission was asking us to address the issue of access on the old road, or if we should allow the Adams family to move ahead with this plan.
Jody, do you know the answer to that?
No, actually, I apologize for that, Elizabeth. You asked me that today, but I didn't have her document attached, and I was honestly too busy to try to
That's
find
fine.
it.
I know it was late when I asked.
I'll report back to you at the
Okay.
next meeting about that. I remember the email, but I did not have time to go back and find it, so
That's fine. I didn't know if we needed to take a vote on that
I
as
need to
well.
double check.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions about correspondence? Okay, so Mark made a motion to waive reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Aye.
Elizabeth, Tom?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to go
And-
into executive session.
For the purpose to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for contract negotiations with Police Chief Tom McEnany regarding his employment contract, as an open session may have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position. We are not going in to discuss strategies with the Office and Professional Employees International Union tonight, so it will be just to discuss strategy with in connection with Chief McEnany's contract, inviting Jody and Eric.
And Dan.
And not returning to open session.
You only come out of executive session for the purpose of adjournment. Oh, and Jody, is Dan coming in with us as well? Dan O'Donnell?
No, he's on standby if we need him, but I wasn't
Okay.
gonna have him start with us.
Okay. So,
Second.
okay. Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. And so Eric asked me to remind all of us, we all have to sign out of the meeting. He's going to disconnect us all, and then we have to sign back in for the executive session, okay?
Bye.
See you all in a few minutes.